Here's how I made the red, white, and blue boots.
I pretty much just took the fringe off of this one and redid it with my own chainette fringe, red, white, and blue. The reason that I went with the boot that's already structured for chainette fringe is because you'll have this pattern that you can follow, so you don't have to worry about that. And it's also stiff enough to hold it, this faux leather. So pretty much all I did was remove the fringe off of this one. When you do that, you want to be careful not to rip the actual faux leather, so you need to be careful. Just kind of lift it until you see a thread, and then you can start popping your threads. This takes a little bit of patience and a little bit of time, but once you get it off, then you can go ahead and start painting. This is probably the longest part outside of the painting that it'll take. You're going to use your Angelus flat white paint. You're going to need your paintbrushes, and you're going to need your contact clear glue adhesive, Gorilla Glue. So that's what I use. So basically, I took off this fringe. I'm going to do that now and show you what it's going to look like. And like I said, the good part is you're going to have your pattern to put your own chainette fringe. You just put it back over there. So it's really easy. This took maybe an hour to make one boot. So you're talking like 2 hours for a boot. Again, I use the Azalea Adriel boot for mine, but you can use any boot that's already structured for fringe. I have this belief that, you can make whatever you want if you want something custom, but it probably already exists in another form. So just find it, and then you can just, use that pattern to go ahead and recreate what you want, which is basically what happened with these boots. So let me take the fringe off of this, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like. Again, please be careful when you're taking the fringe off, because you do not want to rip the actual faux leather of the boot. So you lift it like this, find you a seam, and kind of just dig into it until, just be careful until it pops like one of the main threads, and you'll be able to just keep going. And I guess I should show you. So pretty much I'm going to go here. I see a thread right here. I went in and popped it, and see now I can just kind of flow with taking it off. Again, just be careful. Don't get too aggressive with it. So let me take these off, and then I'll show you the next step. All right, so this is what your boot's going to look like once you take the fringe off. Again, you're going to have a little bit of like fringe thread left over on the back, because that's where they kind of double stitched it in. So you just want to be careful when cutting that off, but it doesn't matter. So what I do is I wipe it down, because it probably has a finish on it, so that the Angelus paint will stick better. I wipe it down with rubbing alcohol and a microfiber cloth. Now, do not use something like acetone, because that will eat into this leather. It's a faux leather, so you don't want to wipe it down with any kind of harsh chemicals. So I just literally wiped it down with some rubbing alcohol that just gets the finish off of it, so that the paint sticks better. You don't want to do it, like I said, excessively. This is a faux leather, so you just don't want a lot of chemicals on it, because it'll ruin it. So you want to wipe that down. Let it dry. I also paint the bottom, because I just think it looks better than having this plain bottom on it. So I wipe the bottom down, let it dry, and then you will be ready to paint. Again, you might have some threads on here, not a big deal. You're going to cover it with paint, so it'll be fine. Again, see how that is kind of taking off the finish there? That's why you don't want to use acetone, because the acetone will actually eat through this, I feel like. So yeah, so that is what it looks like once you get the fringe off. And again, this is what I was saying. You have your placement for your new red, white, and blue fringe. You have it. So you don't have to worry about where to put it to make it fall and look good. So the next thing you want to do is you want to fill the boot. Now you can fill it with tissue. I'm going to show you what I use, because you want it to be as full as possible when you're putting the paint on there. You don't want to be painting into these kind of folds and creases, because the paint doesn't stick as well if it's not full. You can fill it with clothes, whatever you fill it with, it has to be completely full. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Give me a second. Let me get what I use. All right, so this is what I use to fill the boot, and it's basically just a boot shaper, the ones you can blow up. But what I do is I've painted on other boots before. I overfill it so that it can really get to the wide part of the boot. So I'll show you once I put it in there. This one actually has too much air. Let's try it again. Yes. So I feel like there's too many wrinkles here. So I'm going to try it again. Take a little bit more air out. There we go. All right, you just want to make sure it gets all the way in here so that this can kind of be smoothed out when you do the painting. And then I'll fill the top part with paper. What I might even do is, you'll be able to see that I can get to it. I got an air pump. I may air pump it a little bit while it's in here, not to stretch this. Again, this is faux leather. This is not expensive material, so you want to be careful with it. But I just want to make sure it's as smooth as possible for when I paint it and for when I put the chainette fringe on there. Once this goes in, this doesn't come out until you're finished with the boot. So this is a part that you want to pay attention to. Again, you don't want a lot of creases when you're painting, because again, you'll see when I do the Angelus paint, it just doesn't take well if it's not a smooth surface. So let me fill this boot all the way and then we'll start painting. This is it with 5 coats of Angelus paint on it. Now, what I didn't show is, if you want to protect this, I use this acrylic clear coating and gloss to kind of protect it once I finish the 5 coats on there. That'll just keep it from yellowing or from keeping it from like cracking or easily being scratched. So you want to do this in a well ventilated area. To spray the whole boot, let it dry for about 20 minutes, and then you can get ready to put on your chainette fringe. Okay, now a few things to apply in the chainette. One, you want to start from the bottom. You're simply going to put the chainette on, like I said, the same pattern where the silver fringe was. Now here's the thing, you have to line it up by colors. I use this middle seam, if you can see this, to line it up. So I'll give you an example. So here's your chainette fringe. How do you know which side is the back? The back of chainette fringe is going to be where the thread that's holding it together looks thicker. So on this side, see how the red looks thinner? That's the front. The back, the red looks thicker. So that's how you know. What you're going to do is you want to line up your colors. Now on this chainette, for me, the blue was in between the red and the white, so it was perfect to put the blue as my center. What do I mean? I mean that I line the blue up right in the center of the seam so that it's always going to be blue straight down the middle. That way your colors, when it does the waterfall, will stay consistent and it won't like look crazy and all over the place. So this is my chainette fringe. Now you only want to do 1/2 of the boot at a time. So for example, I'm only going to do this half when I do the glue, because you don't want your contact cement, where is it? You don't want your contact cement to dry too much, and you also don't want to have it on this side because you want to be able to place it with control. Okay, so how do I put on the contact cement? I will show you. You want to get a piece of wood or something like this, and it's contact cement. So that means you're going to put it on each one of the surfaces. So I'm going to put contact cement on the boot, and I'm going to put contact cement on the chainette fringe. That way I'm going to seal them together. This is what's going to make it like the ones that we got originally, the Adriel boots were stitched in. I'm not stitching this in because you need an industrial sewing machine for that. But this will hold that fringe on there once it dries. So here we go. I'm going to show you. So again, just the side of the boot, I'm going to go across the pattern or the line, perforation line that's already on here from the other fringe. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to go straight across that line with the glue. Just like this. Just follow, like I said, the perforated line from the old chainette fringe. And you're going to put your lid back on here. And this is not a liquidy glue, so it's not going to do too much moving. And you just want to kind of spread it though, like this. It's like butter. Just spread it so that you get a nice thin consistency line like this. And then you're going to let that dry for about a minute. While that's drying, what you want to do is you want to take your chainette again. You want to find, I just keep lining it up. I know this is the back, okay? And I'm going to line my blue up in the middle. So I'm going to take this blue, and I know I'm going to line in the middle. I want to make sure I have enough that goes all the way around the back. Okay, so I know that I'm going to go from here to here and put my glue. So I'm going to get some paper here. You can move that to the side. And I know I'm going to try it again. I'm going to line it up this way. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to lay it flat like so. I'm going to get my contact cement or my Gorilla contact cement, and I'm just going to put a nice line of glue on the fringe, on the part that the fringe is going to contact to the boot. Just like this. Again, this is not a liquidy glue, so you have to kind of work with it a little bit. Put the top back on here. And again, you're just going to spread it on, like I said, like some butter, so that you get a nice little spread that it's on everything. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for like 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be a lot. You don't want it to be messy. You don't need a lot of contact cement for a good hold. So you don't want to put too much on there. You don't want it dripping off the sides or on anything. Like I said, just a nice thin layer on each surface. So a nice thin layer on the boot, a nice thin layer on the chainette fringe. Again, the most important part is to just make sure you're lining it up correctly and that you're on the right side, because several times I put the glue on the wrong side. And once you do that, you have to just cut another piece of fringe. So again, contact cement on the on the boot, and just on the one side, contact cement on the chainette fringe. You're gonna let this dry for 2 minutes before you actually bond them. So I'm gonna let this dry and then I'll show you how to bond it. All right, so it's been 2 minutes. This will be a little tacky to touch. I always keep gloves on to protect my nails and to not get chemicals on my fingers. But if you touch it, it's going to be tacky. It's not going to be soft or like liquidy. It's just going to feel like some tape, okay? That's how you know when you're ready to bond it. So again, watch me. I'm only doing 1/2 of the boot, and I'm lining up the blue right into the center, right? So I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to line the blue all the way. This is for every piece of chainette. You want to make sure your colors are lined up. I'm going to line the blue right in the center of the thing. You don't want your fringe to be in the glue, so you want to just move that back. And then you're just going to slightly press this into each other. And as you're doing that, it's contacting, it's bonding. That's not going to go anywhere. Now, you can move it if you make a mistake. It does take a few hours to cure. So if you mess up, you can pull this back. You just don't want to have to do that too many times. So again, I'm just following the line of the old fringe. That makes this super easy. You don't have to worry about, are you lining it up? Are you even? You're literally using the line that's already there. And I'm just going around the boot like this. You just want to make sure you're pressing it into each other. That's why the boot has to stay full, because you need to put a little pressure on it to press that in there. I just go all the way around like this. You are going to have a little extra. I cut that at the end. I like having extra just to make sure I can go all the way around. And again, you're just going to push that in there. Once this dries all the way, it's super clear. You don't see it. But again, because you have fringe falling on top of fringe, you're not going to see any glue. Again, I just did the 1/2, and that's why, because I can have control. Now I can go back and do the other side. So I'm just going to fold this over. Again, you want to make sure you don't have any fringe in your glue. And you see how I have this blue lined up with this blue, like that. I line the blue up all the way down the middle. Got to keep the boot looking uniformed and the colors looking like they flow together. So there we go. So that half is on. I'm going to flip this back. Now you're going to do the other half of the boot. So you get your glue again. Same process. You're going with the pattern of the perforated line from the other fringe. Again, this is not a liquid tea glue. It will not run. You're just going to go with the line. Like that. Get your little wooden stick. Spread it on a nice thin spreaded layer here. Like that. Again, let that dry. While it's drying, you can put your chainette fringe glue on. Now, what I had to do was kind of get this, something that's kind of elevated, so that you can put your other glue on your fringe, but you still need a flat surface. So I just did it like that. So once it's there, I'm going to then put my contact glue on my chainette fringe. Again, doesn't have to be a super thick layer. Just like that. Make sure you put your cap on your glue every time, because contact cement glue dries really fast. And if you leave it open, you're going to mess up the whole bottle. You don't want to do that. So, and then you're just going to spread this on your chainette fringe like this. Same process. Again, make sure this stays lined up in the middle. And I'm going to let that dry for 2 minutes. Again, you just want to keep this fringe out of the glue. It's going to keep trying to find itself in there, but it's really easy to just, move it to the side. And then you're going to let this dry for 2 minutes, and you're going to go ahead and finish and wrap around. I'm going to show you how to end the back. And that's how you put on your chainette fringe. And you're going to do that for the next 3 times. So it's 5 in total. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels. Again, start from the bottom. You don't want to start from the top, because this fringe is going to get all in the way. It's just easier to start from the bottom. And make sure you're lining your colors up so that your colors are uniform all the way down the boot. So yes, I'm going to let this dry for 2 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to finish it up in the back. Again, you would do that 3 more times, and then I'll show you how to finish up the boot. All right, so this is dried for about 2 minutes. Again, it's going to be tacky. This is the other side of the boot. So it's really simple. I'm going to move this. And again, I like to just point the boot at me to make sure everything's centered. And again, same process. You're just going to press it into that line. You're just going to press it into the line. And like I said, the good part is you can just follow the pattern that's already set out. So you don't have to worry about if it's even. And like I said, just press it in there. That's the whole point of contact glue, is you press it into each other and that creates that bond. And again, once it's dry, it's not going anywhere. So you don't have to worry about the fringe coming off the boot. Now, this is how I finish the back. So again, you're going to have a lot of extra on the back here. And it's going to be doing all kinds of things, but get your fringe out of there. And then what I do is I seal it right on the seam. Make sure it's in the camera. I seal it right on the seam. Press those together like that. And then I'm going to take my scissors, like so. I'm just going to snip it. Not too far. You just want to use the top of your scissors because you don't want to cut the fringe that you want on there. And you're going to, not too close to the boot, not too close to the boot. You just want to snip the fringe. Again, you don't want your scissors too far down because you don't want to cut the fringe that you want to stay on there. And again, I just let it seal. And it almost creates like this little extra fringe that you have that's going to go down the boot. Like it's like a seam, like an invisible seam. And that contact cement is going to keep those together. Again, you can clean it up if you have a little glue showing, but that's okay because again, you don't see this part of the boot because the fringe falls on top of each other. The only place you want to be careful about that is the top of the boot, but you're going to be putting the fringe like right up to the top. So you shouldn't see any glue. And that's on there. That's on there. And see how the colors, let me see how the colors line up. The red is going to go on top of the red. The blue is going to go on top of the blue, red. And again, this was just a good pattern because the blue is kind of in the middle of a red and a white on each side. So it makes the boot look really uniformed. And again, that's just how you do that. And you can, you know, clean up the fringe and straighten it out once all of it is on the boot. But that blue is going to run straight down the middle. And yeah. And once it's dry, this is on here. Like this is not coming off of the boot. You don't have to worry about that. You just want to make sure, again, you don't have any fringe in glue or under each of these seams. Well, yeah, that's on there. So I'm going to do the other 3. Again, you do 3. And just remember when you do the top, you're going to leave the chainette fringe right at the top of it. So you just want to line it up again the same way you lined up with this perforated line. Yeah. And that's it. Again, you just kind of close the back. You have a little extra there that's going to give you a little fringe at the back. And it's on there. That's it. Let me do the other 3 and then I'll show you how to put the stars on. So this is the boot with your 5 rows done. If you find that it has a lot of static in it, you can take a dryer sheet and kind of run it through there and it should keep it from being staticky and having them cross. You also may have a few fringes that have like a curl or a curve in them. If it bothers you really bad, you can take a flat iron, but just keep it on a low heat and it'll bump that out. But remember, it will melt the finish on this and that one will be longer than most of them. So I wouldn't do that unless there's just an absolute crease in them. 9 times out of 10, if you allow it to just kind of sit, they'll fall out and it'll kind of fall better into its pattern. But as you can see, there's a pattern here because all the blue is in the middle. Then you have your red and you have your white. And again, just allow it to sit for a couple days and they'll lay flat and it'll be perfect. Now, I like hardware on my shoes. So I got these on Amazon and they're just little stars. And the good thing about these, and I'll put a link to them, is that they will punch through the leather. So you don't have to do much. You just have to put them in. Hold on, let me open this. And this is going to be this hardware that I added. And it's just some stars that you can puncture in there. The good thing about them is they'll go straight through the faux leather. So you just kind of mash it on there and it'll stay on there. And I did them pretty much in the middle on the top of the trim where you have the red. So I did like every red kind of section. That way they're not all the way around, but just kind of where the red is. And so I like hardware on my shoes. So that was a way to add a little bit of hardware and still stay themed with the red, white, and blue. And like I said, I will put the link for these. I think they were like $7, $8 for a pack of 50. So you can just have a bunch of them. Actually, I think it was like 150 in there. So, you know, you can play with it, put the hardware where you like. Again, you pretty much just press it in there and it already goes into the faux leather. So you don't have to glue it or anything like that. You literally just press them in there. So, and that's it. And then the boot will be finished. And again, like I said, if you let it sit for a couple of days, those fringes will kind of pan out and go straight. So I hope you enjoy and that this was easy to follow. If you have any questions, just let me know. So yeah, that's the boot. Enjoy.